And then, all right, let's just chat through it. You ready?
Absolutely.
Hey, Mike, thanks for taking time, man, just to share. You've been such a huge part of my life and educated me and challenging me. And as you know, I've always been blown away by your story of leading something as EQ, as marketing, to then going over to a CF role, IQ in finances, and being able to do those both ways. And I thought it was so important to have this conversation because so many people right now in this industry are being forced to level up in an adjacent job. And it's such a new thing for people to do. And I wonder if you would just take a couple minutes and talk to us about why it's important to have the ability to do that.
Yeah, Josh, great to be here. I mean, I feel like, in general, for me at least, so I made this transition from VP of marketing of a global company to CFO, and the company was public. So each of those roles are inherently different. But what I want to tell you is that they're also a lot the same.
Hmm.
And what I've felt like in my life is that life is really about transitions. And I was blessed when I was young to encounter people that were inspirational to me in a number of ways. Some who were inspirational in terms of learning in ways that you might not expect, and some that were inspirational learning in the obvious ways. So I'll start with sort of the less obvious ways, and that is that I encountered some people early in my career who were fixed. They did something good in their life, and that was the point at which they stopped learning, and their whole worldview was based upon this one singular experience. It's almost like they took these glasses, put them on, and even though they got fogged up, that was the way they were going to see the world forever. And so what I decided at a young age was that I couldn't be that way. I always wanted to be someone who would evolve. And the reason why that proved to be important is that I feel like no matter what route we take in our career, we're bound to encounter things that either are out of our control and we have to respond, or are within our control and we must respond because we want to. And they call for exactly the same thing. And I don't think there's any secret to it, but there's two factors that strike me as super important in people's lives and in their business. One of them is curiosity, being curious enough to ask, well, what is that? Why is that? How is that? And then the other part about it is to be willing to kind of make that leap. So that curiosity combined with, some degree of motivation, like, wow, if that's possible, then I can, or then I can help.
Wow.
And it was really those two things that to me make transition in role or transition in life both so important and also so achievable for just about anybody.
So good, Mike. I'm gonna lean into, because we want to talk about why it's important to be able to transition, but I want to talk about a challenge. If you're going to challenge me, and here's what you said. Let's say I am the person with the fixed glasses. This is the fixed mindset. This is the fixed worldview. Challenge me.
Yeah, I think in that sense, I mean, what I would challenge you with, Josh, is take your glasses off.
Hmm.
What happened 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, the world isn't the same place. I mean, gosh, think of what we've all been through this past year. Even old people like me are seeing the world in a completely different way. And so my challenge would be take your glasses off and look at it in a different point of view. Think about if you were, the younger person in the room, or if you were the older person in the room, how would you see things differently? How would this situation appear to you? And if you think about it as well, I mean, one of the gifts I have in consulting is I'm not locked into the way an organization has always done things. I wasn't part of the decision, so I'm not married to prior choices that were made, and I didn't come from this system of this is the way we do things.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of what we do, we're locked in our heads about this is the way we do things, and that can be an individual, me as Mike, this is the way I do things, or it can be we as the organization that I'm part of. And so what I would challenge people to do is think about it differently, because we're always going to have opportunities, but we've got to be willing to look at them differently to be able to take advantage.
So it's important because life only gives you the option of change. This is why this is important, to be able to change, because it's your only option. And you've got to be willing to take your glasses off and see the world anew. And then the final thing is, man, inspire me. Tell me I can do this. Tell me I can do.
I would say, you mentioned, Josh, that life gives you the options. What that means is there are choices, and we make choices every day about, I mean, there's the classic of, choosing our attitude, but there's also, the choice to learn. I think about it often where, I've been driving for many, many years. My skills as a driver don't always evolve at the rate at which I drive. They
Hmm.
should, but the reason they don't is because I'm not thinking about it. I'm not
Hmm.
thinking, I'm not analyzing, well,
Right.
what's this situation? How am I doing? What could I do differently if I go on this road trip again? And that's because we're not analyzing things. And so
Yeah.
what I would challenge people to do in their lives really is think about things critically. You go through a meeting, you go through a transition, you have a conversation. Take a minute afterwards to think about, what did that really mean? What could I have done differently? What could I have done better? Um, Own yourself and think about what you can do. The military does what they have, these things called after action reviews. Individually, we have a choice to do that. And that's what I would call a learning accelerator.
It's good. It's good, Mike. Let me ask this question. We talk about this framework where we call it the in and out. What are the things that we need in our life in order to be able to do what we're talking about? Level up in adjacent views, take the glasses off, like understand. What are the habits, things that I need in my life on the regular, which I think you were just getting at. I love. But in order to do this, what do I need in? And then in a minute, we'll talk about what we need out. But what do we need in?
Yeah, I think on the inside of it, I talked about, a minute ago about curiosity. And to me, that is a crucial life skill. And it's not strictly business. It's, curious people continue to learn, they continue to evolve throughout their lives.
Hmm.
There's someone I know who's in his 80s, and he's one of the most fascinating people. But you know what makes him fascinating? It's not that he's 80 years old. It's not that he's had success in his life. It's not that he's raised a great family. What makes him really unique is he is incredibly curious.
Hmm.
I'll get a call now and then about, hey, look, listen to this. I just realized this. And it'll be like, it's not so much that I'm interested always in the same topic, but what I am interested in is his joy of learning. And
Yeah.
so curiosity is one thing that I think we all need in our lives. Number two, I think we need self-awareness. And this is a hard one because we all, I think that we're self-aware, but we're not. So
Hmm.
I feel like in a lot of ways, our task in life is to help understand ourselves in the way that others do as well. And the best analogy I can give is, if I leave you a voicemail, Josh, if I listen to my voicemail, I do not sound like me. And the reason I don't is that the voice in my head is different than the way it comes out. So my task, my opportunity really is, I want to recognize my voice. And that's the key to self-awareness. The other thing, a couple of other things that I think are really important is humility. And I feel like we have to have this notion that it's sort of double-edged. Nothing is beneath me, because that enables me to learn and to participate, but also nothing's above.
Right.
So having that humility is really important. And then I think the other thing that we may have talked about this before, but it's confidence. And confidence, not with arrogance, but I feel like there are three different types of confidence that I think about a lot. One of them is, I can do it. That's kind of the obvious thing of confidence. The other thing I think is confidence is, I can learn it. And that's really what we're talking about here today. But the third one is, I can get help.
Hmm.
And it's not, you might think, oh, well, getting help is not confident. Well, true. But what I mean is, if I can get help, it means I'm willing to get help, which means that I'm recognizing that I have a gap that I need to fill. And so it's that notion of confidence that I think is super important as well. So those would be the in things.
Those are good. It's funny, Mike. I was talking with our investors, and I put together our first Series A deck, and they've become friends. So this wasn't hurtful, but they were like, "Dude, this thing sucks. It's not inspiring. It's not." And I'm like, "Send me one that inspires you. Send me one that you've done. Send me one, like, educate me on what a Series A looks like at this level." And it would have been really easy to get shrink down and stubborn and go back and try again in my vacuum. But in my little world, this was good. In your world, this was terrible. So introduce me to your world, because I can learn, And to me, you could see they were like, I think it is confidence. I think it's incredibly confident to ask for help. I think it shows that you're fearless to learn. You're fearless to expand. And I think that's what people want. They want to know that what they see is not done.
Oh
It's
yeah.
evolving,
I
So
love that, Josh. I mean, I serve as chairman of the board of a company in Nashville, and we're going through this kind of like team building exercise with the management team and the team at the company. And so one of the things that they're asking for is philosophies and, what inspires you, what frustrates you, that kind of thing. And one of the things I always ask for is, and it's kind of along the lines of what you just said, is help me see what you see and why you see it that way.
Mhm.
And if I ask it, that's different than I feel like it's less threatening than if I ask, why is that? You know, because there's this, what I'm trying to convey is the way I feel, which is, hey, I want to learn from you, Josh. But if I just say why, it may not come across the same way as, hey, Josh, help me see what you see and why
And it
is that?
assumes that you know how they see it and you disapprove. Which when you don't send the message that I already have everything figured out that you're thinking, and I think it's ridiculous because you don't know everything that they're thinking. And I think by being able to say like, hey, help me help expand my thought on this. So to that point, what do we need out? If we're gonna get rid of this fixed mindset and fixed place, what do we need out?
Yeah, I think there's, this is maybe, self, is very obvious, but arrogance is one of them. And I think sometimes, it's arrogance of, hey, I already know this, so I don't want to slow down and teach you what it is that I already know, or I'm already decided, so I don't want to stop. And I face that challenge myself, that sometimes if I kind of in my mind, I have these rubrics about how I make decisions, and, things will click and they'll start ticking boxes in my mind. And then I'll reach a conclusion like, okay, now I'm kind of done with this. Now let's move on. But not everybody's in the same place. So I constantly have to remind myself that, look, my job as a human really is to carry people along. My job isn't to be out front, let's do it my way, but rather let's do it our way.
Mhm.
And the best way is what we collectively reach. And I think it takes stepping back from arrogance. The other thing I think we need to kind of remove is distraction. And in many organizations or even in our lives, it's we humans, and I'm the same way. We tend to chase that shiny new thing. And even I'm a runner, right, Josh? And so I guarantee you, if somebody steps onto a trail, 100 yards ahead of me, I don't know why it is, but I'm going to try to run them down. And it's ridiculous because sometimes I'll think like, what was that really all about? It was about nothing but ego, right? It's like, oh, want to see if I can catch them, but like it accomplished nothing.
Right.
So I think that's where removing distraction it can be super helpful. The other part about it is, I believe that positivity is a choice. And so I kind of remove the things that drive me towards negativity.
Mm.
And that's a mindset, but I think it also can be, be important about the choices you make about how you think. It's what you allow into your mind, what you allow to bother you bothers you, not because it exists, but it bothers you because you allowed it to. And so that's a choice that we can all make. So I think that's something that's big to
Real
get
quick
out.
on a practical one, give me one way you get something out of your mind that's harassing you, that's not helping you. What's a practical? Is it you know what I mean? Like, cause we're not robots, we are humans. So what are some ways you can, extract that?
Yeah, for me, I think it's a matter of thinking about what the impact is of even thoughts, and I think social media is an easy analogy to use with this, Josh, and that, I'll see people, I do use social media for business, but I also use it just to keep in touch with people.
Yeah.
And sometimes people will post something that I disagree with. And I'm thinking, is it really worth my reaction to this? And is it really worth responding? They have these thoughts. They're free to have those thoughts. It has no bearing on me. And so as a practical matter, what I try to do is think about what's the cost of the thought.
Yep.
And that's where, in some ways, it's sort of a selective perception. I've built, sometimes in a negative way, but I built an ability to set things aside because it doesn't serve my purpose. And my purpose is more important than my reaction. But my reaction affects my ability to achieve my purpose. And it's that nuance that I think is really important, but it all comes down to choices.
It does. It's funny with everything going on in society, you have an opportunity to dive in on a political, religious, whatever you want to call it, thing. But you do ask yourself, is that my purpose? Is that my priority? Is that what I'm supposed to be doing with my life? Or is there something else? And if it is, then great. If it's not, then be aware of that. I like that. Mike, we'll try to do a couple quick questions here. And if it works out, we'll do them because questions are harder than riffing. But if you were to, you know, somebody had to ask themselves one question about awareness, what would that question be?
Let me think about that one, for a minute. I think, what are I guess maybe to ask the question in a different way would be, what are the elements that enable people to be self-aware, if that's what we're kind of getting at? And I tend to think about that in terms of, I internalize those things. So where am I going, would be one of them. What skills do I need to get to that sort of destination?
Yeah.
What do I have now? What do I need to get? And how can I learn that? And, I think it's almost thinking about your job or your life as a project. Let's say that, we're going on a trip together. We have kind of an idea of our destination. We have an idea as to what that destination is going to need. So we're going to kind of pack up our backpacks or our car to achieve what it is that we're intending to do. We also have a route to get there. There's all these variables. And life, I think, is kind of the same way. And I think sometimes what happens is we get caught up in packing the car, but we forget where it is that we're trying to go.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of, I think, constantly going back to what's my purpose? Where am I going with this? And it doesn't even have to be this gigantic philosophical thing that we're kind of riffing on now, but it can be as simple as like, look, I'm aiming for this role. I'm transitioning to this role. What specifically is that required that I don't have, and how am I going to get it?
And I like that right there at the end of, I'm kind of looking through these 5. It's awareness, choice, motivation, empathy, and skills. And it's kind of, am I aware of what is needed for me to grow and expand in adjacent markets? Choice. Have I chosen to take off the glasses? That's the one I want to pull from this. That's the one I want in this thing. Motivation. Have I defined my purpose? Have I done that? Because if not, we do end up getting pulled every which way. And so in order to grow, we've got to actually have a target out there. When you think about empathy, one question, what's one thought that we'd want to give our viewers on a question to ask themselves that would allow them to become more empathetic in this space of being able to grow?
I think a big part of it is, you talked a little bit about motivation, but I think part of it is understanding why. And I constantly think about other people and why is it that they're doing what they do? Why do they think what they think? And why are they responding to me in the way that they respond? And what role can I play in addressing those things? Because I think about a big part of any job, any big part of any role really is communication. And communication starts not with what I say, but with how the message is received. And so I think too often we cling to our words and again, lose sight of the purpose. And a big part of empathy is understanding, how are you responding? What's in it for you? And how can I influence what I say so that you can understand things in the way that I understand them? Or how can I expand my knowledge and understand things in the way that you understand them?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think when you think about empathy, it's you're not the only one that's changing. You're not the only one that's going through upheaval. So is your boss. Everyone below you and above you is going through the same thing you are. And so if you can walk in, I can't imagine what it was like, but I'm sure for Gary, when you guys were going public, I don't think he'd taken a company public before. Or if he had, maybe it was his first time, whatever. Everyone's learning this new space. And so I think to be able to have that mentality that says, as I'm learning this, I also know you are too. And so there's got to be some space. So ask yourself the question, am I aware of what other people are having to do and learn and grow as well? So that you kind of come in with that spirit.
I think a big starting point for being able to, to sharpening our empathy skills is starting from the standpoint of believing that people have good intentions.
Yeah.
Because if we believe that they have good intentions, then it opens our mind to understanding what issues are they facing, what motivations do they have, and how is change kind of affecting them. Change is traumatic to everyone, and people respond in different ways. And there's some people that are utterly calm outside and utterly panicked inside. They would never show it. Some people are all over the board. And I think the other thing too is to keep in mind too is, in light of, think about the situation we're in, understanding your own sort of skill sets. How can I participate in the direction of the group to evolve through this change? And we're all different in that way. Some people are again incredibly calm and they have a part to play. Some people are a little more reactive, and that put them in the right place too. So I think it's recognizing that we all can bring something to the table and we all have good intentions.
Yeah, and I love it when I look at skills. It's the simple question is, to the point you just made, is what new skill do I need to develop to execute at a high level this new role? And it's funny how often we just do stuff, and we don't actually stop and go, wait a minute, step back. The driving was a great example. If you're not careful, you'll just drive into your new role as if with that same level of focus that you do drive in a car. And the truth of the matter is, when you drive into a role, you need to sit back and go, what skill do I need to drive better? And I think that's a great question to ask there too. So
I think, it's interesting. We have a podcast called What I Wish I Knew. And the gist of it really was to try to get people to reflect on what they learned through pivotal moments in their lives. Kind of those moments when you're like, gosh, I wish I knew that, before. So we asked that question, right? So one of the people that we asked the question to was someone who got a PhD in biomechanical engineering. Probably not the easiest thing to get a PhD in. And she was, found herself stuck in a lab. And she wanted something different. So she just gets into, martial arts and Muay Thai fighting. She's like, it was a great analogy for starting a business because I was suddenly and constantly out of my comfort zone. Mm-hmm. But she goes, if you think about life, what you got to be able to do is to be willing to look back at each stage or each phase, whatever jobs you had. If you look back at each of those jobs or each of those roles or each of those experiences and think critically about what skills, what did you learn from that? And again, we've talked a little bit about skill inventory, right? Mm-hmm. And what she was saying is look back on those pivotal moments and try to draw a line through those themes, those things you learned in each of your roles in life, and how that prepares you for a new role that you're looking to take in whatever way that is. And I think it's that kind of reflection, like, hey, what did I learn from my first job? What did I learn from the past 6 months? What did I learn from the challenges our industry faced?
Yep. So good. Mike, thanks for taking time. This was 30 minutes of rich thoughts and life experience. And there's no way you can get through this just listening to this and not go, I feel more equipped and inspired and empowered to level up in adjacent opportunities. I think it's great, man. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you, Josh.
So glad.